What we're going to cover on this particular video, again, this is from my automatic transmissions class, and we're in the overhaul procedure for the 4R70W transmission, which I have up here on the bench. But we're going to cover a couple of task sheets. We're going to cover task sheets 758, 758, and 759. So they'll run in sequence, but we can cover the information for both of them on a real quick procedure here that goes more along the line with preventive maintenance and also kind of covering yourself on the overhaul procedure. What we're going to cover is air check, and we're going to inspect some the one-way clutches, the racers, and the rollers involved with them. So what we'll do is we'll do 758 first, and that's the air test operation. Now, the reason you want to do this is because as you assemble a transmission, I always did my hydraulics first. Anything that had to do with hydraulics, the pump, the valve body, I did the drums and all that stuff first. And then what I did, the rest of it was just stack up. But what I did, when you put them together, you want to kind of leave yourself a little breadcrumb trail. If something should go wrong, and see, I'm going to do a little adjustment here on the camera and get us elevated just a bit. That might be all the way here. Okay, there we go. I'll get a little bit of adjustment there. What you want to do is you want to cover yourself, and you want to make sure that you know that these clutches apply while they're on the bench. That way, if something goes wrong, the R&R man comes back in and he says, hey, that thing wouldn't go in reverse or wouldn't do this. You know that the integrity of that clutch is good because you checked it on the bench. Something probably went wrong. Maybe you hooked the linkage up wrong. That never happens, right? So what we're going to do first, I'm going to check the reverse clutch. Now, remember, the reverse clutch here is fed through the pump. Okay, that was where all the pressure was going to the valve body area through these little holes down here. So I'm going to set the reverse clutch on there. You got to make sure you have the new rings, sealing rings, your new seals on the piston in here. You've already checked your clutch pack clearance and all this other stuff. So what I'm going to do, we'll take our gun here. It's regulated pressure. I got it knocked down to about 10 psi. I don't use a lot. The main reason being is if I can get it to hold with about 10 psi, and it's going to leak down, but I'm going to see how long it takes to leak down. I know that it's going to hold when this reverse clutch has about, when it's getting full line pressure with reverse boost. But ordinarily about 125, 150 psi, I know this thing's going to hold. So I've got the little holes marked down here. This one's marked for reverse clutch. And again, just a little bit of air pressure, but you can see the clutches apply. And you can see, if you just look down there, you can see that Belleville plate applying. And you can see how cool. I just pull the trigger and release. As soon as that clutch applies, I release. And that's about 10 psi, and it's just stroking that clutch just really nice. Sounds quiet, and I don't have a lot of hissing. I don't have any air escaping. So that's a good clutch pack. I know that this thing's going to work. No reason it shouldn't. Next one I'm going to do is the forward drum. Remember, this is our initial engagement. It's got the input shaft. The turbine shaft goes into the torque converter. I'm going to lower that. That is this top set of rings right here. The reverse was this bottom set of rings. And I'll lower that down on there. Now I'll find my reverse supply hole. Just a little bit here, a nice little clunk right there. And you hear that air, that's it bleeding off right there. I just release the trigger. As soon as it clunks, I release. And that's a good one right there. Sometimes you can spin them and just make sure it's applying good with the rings going around. But that's a good one. You can just see them stroking. Not a lot of clearance there. I think I mic'd this one out around 50 thousandths, something like that. So that's good. That's down at the bottom end. So I like that clutch drum. That one's going to live. Okay. Now what you want to make sure that you're doing when you air check these drums, you don't need a lot of special equipment. I think one of your questions on your lab sheet or your task sheet, any special equipment. Well, you need an air compressor, of course. If you're doing it at home, you don't need a real big one. You just need some light pressure. But always regulate it down. So I'm using about 10 psi, and you want one of those blow guns like I had there. You can get them off the tool dealer. Don't go too cheap on them, because a lot of them are just, as soon as you pull the trigger, you got full line pressure. So some of them you can regulate. You just barely pull the trigger, you let a little air through. Okay, so have you an air gun, and by all means, guys, have your safety glasses, something over your eyeballs. Okay. Now the last one we're going to check is my direct clutch. This is a little guy. It's down there in the very back with the output shaft. Now this one is kind of critical. I'm going to air check. It's going to go in through this hole right here, in between these two upper ring grooves. I'm going to air check it through there. The air has to go up through the shaft and then in through this center right here. There's a couple of sealing rings right down here. Air comes out right between them and into the back of the drum. But the air also has to go from the valve body into the case, up through the back of the case into the sleeve that this output shaft sits in, and then back up into the shaft. So that air has to travel over a foot to get to this little drum. So this is kind of really dependent on his air pressure here. So let me check that direct drum. I'm going to hit that upper hole. I just get that rubber tip right over it. And let's see. Well, I'm off of it a little bit. Let me get on there a little better. There you go. See, and I release that. Man, that thing took forever to bleed off. You can see my fingers releasing the pressure down there. And that thing is just eating it up. So that's a good clutch pack right there. That's wonderful. I know that this reverse has got good seals on it and everything. So I'm going to leave them in there. A little ease of installation. So, there's one on this pump. There's one I didn't check. The one I haven't got marked. Right here is my intermediate clutch. That's this piston right here that applies my intermediate clutches. The reason I don't air check that is because there's nothing to keep the piston back. I'm just barely going to hit it, and you'll see the piston just stroke a little bit. Whoops, sorry, over here. Up, I'm still, wait a minute. That's still the wrong one, isn't it? Oh, here it is, I'm sorry. Right here. That's what I get for wearing my cheap glasses here. You can see the piston trying to come out of the bore. I'm not going to hit it real hard because the thing will come out and my lip seals will pop out of the bore. It's kind of like your brake piston over traveling there. So I just check out and make sure it's got a little bit of movement, and I back off. That's why you want one of those guns where you can just barely squeeze it. Lets a little air through. Okay, the next thing that's all we needed for the drums, to air check the drums. We did the forward, we did the reverse, the direct, the intermediate, just barely. And we won't, there's some more air checking we can do on the case, but I'll cover that when we do the assembly. Sometimes you can check it through the case. 470W doesn't loan itself too well to it unless you have a air test plate to bolt down over the body. Next thing we're going to check, we're going to do task sheet number 759, and we're going to check the one-way clutches. Obviously, when we talked about torque converters, there's one in the torque converter. Obviously, we can't do that one. I'm going to show you. Let me see, where's my planetary? Oh, here we go. Let me grab this big guy over here. All right, so we have the drive low one-way roller clutch. Okay, so this is on drive in first gear. It's also in manual low, and this is so it's our drive low one-way roller clutch. As you can see, we talked about it before, but you have rollers that travel in one direction. You can kind of pull them over to the side, and a little spring sends them back. This is the inner race. So you check this. This is a race for that. We were talking about power flow on a previous video, and this is the inner race. You can see it's really nice and smooth where the light hits it. It's got a good surface for these rollers to apply against. You don't want one that's got little indentions worn around it like that, because that's where those rollers have been slipping. This thing goes in here, just rolls right in. Now obviously that's an opposite and equal reaction. I can roll the planetary like this, but it locks going the other way. Same way with this, see? But you can hear that little squeak. That's a good spring and roller right there, man. There's just enough friction. Sound like a little dog barking, and it locks going the other way. Freewheel, lock. Locks this way, freewheels this way. So that's a good one. That's how you can check it. Now, if you got any doubts, those are pretty cheap. If you're doing an overhaul that you want to last any amount of time, put a new one in there. Pass it on to the customer, and they will love you for it. Last a long time. Now, the other one I want to cover, this guy right here. This is the older models, the AOD, the AODE, some of the earlier 4R70Ws used a spring and roller, one-way roller clutch like the other one, like the low one-way. This one here, they had the roller on there, and it did great. This guy right here doesn't count as a sprag. It's not a one-way roller clutch. It is a one-way clutch. But this right here is what they call a mechanical diode. It's about as strong as a 3/8 ratchet, in my opinion. This thing here, I've seen more of these things blow up. I mean, this thing just hand grenades from the inside. It's all bulged out, and you can barely get the snap ring off. And it's a sealed unit. You can't replace that diode in there. You know, if you guys have done electrical work, a diode is kind of a one-way check valve for current flow for electrons. So it's a diode. It's a one-way, I don't know, one-way check valve for torque or whatever. It's junk in my opinion. I didn't know if you noticed when I roll this guy one way, as soon as I try to go back the other way, it's locked. I mean, man, there is no reaction time. It's just locked down. That's the way the other roller clutch was on here. But look at this guy. As soon as it clicks, man, I got half a mile of play before that thing grabs again. I hate these things. I don't like putting them back in, so what I would do is go old school. I'd grab one of the earlier drums, the reverse drum, and I would change it out for one with the roller type, because these don't interchange. You can't put the roller type on this drum. And I would change it out, change out my intermediate clutches, make sure the band surface was good, and I went with it, and I didn't worry about it. This one here makes an excellent door stop or a wheel chalk out in the parking lot. They're good. Boat anchors, stuff like that, so they're pretty good for that stuff here, but I'm not real crazy about that. So one-way diode, or a mechanical diode rather. It shows to be okay. You get one new out of the box, it looks like that too, okay? So I don't like them. But it is what it is, you know. They didn't pay me to build it, so I just use them when I have to. So, but other than that, guys, that's your inspection procedure. Should lock one way, should roll the other way. And if the condition is either good or bad, if it does that, well, it's okay. One of them's real cheap to replace. The other one, I'm going to replace it regardless. Okay, I'm not going to run it. So, but basically, guys, that is it. This video is kind of short and sweet, but it shows you little things to do to protect yourself on the overhaul. And there's no question, you know, man, I hope that thing doesn't fail down the road. Sometimes it goes that, and if any builders out there see this, you'll know what I'm talking about. So that is it. That's the information you need for task sheet 758, 759, and we'll have some other videos coming up in the near future. Everybody have a great day, and thank you very much.